In the world of science fiction, there are lots of good guys and bad guys, but there's never been a character quite like Avon, the seemingly cold-hearted computer expert in the series Blake 7. Now, you may not want him on your spaceship, but you definitely want him on your side. Good evening, I'm George Sampson, and tonight we meet the actor who played the role of Avon, Paul Darrow. Recently we were talking with Terry Nation, and he said he would like to bring back the series Blake 7. Do you think that's going to happen?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yes, much in the same way that Star Trek, a show with which I'm sure you're familiar, took rather a long time to come back.
If it is revived, would you be a part of the production?
Yes, if Terry Nation wrote it, yes, but under no other circumstances.
Why did the series end in the first place?
Candidly, your guess is as good as mine. We were doing rather well. It was doing well in the ratings, in so much as it was against possibly the most popular soap in England at the time, and we were denting their ratings very badly. Maybe they got upset and tried to knock us off our pedestal a little. I don't really know.
What was the reason that was given at the time?
None.
None?
No reason is given by the BBC. No.
So it's a mystery to you then?
Yes, I mean, there's no reason why they should give a reason. If you don't mind my repeating myself, it just seemed perhaps to have run its course, and indeed I felt perhaps it might have done, but having been to the United States and seen the extraordinary reaction over here to it, and the loyalty that still remains in England, I think there's an opening there for at least one more series of Blake 7, and indeed it may very well happen.
It seems that Blake 7 is sometimes compared to the American series Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a valid comparison?
I suppose it is valid to an extent, in so much as we dematerialize and Scotty beams everybody down. That's very similar. In other ways, no. I've had the pleasure of attending a number of conventions with Star Trek stars. Mm-hmm. Recently, Nichelle Nichols, who plays Lieutenant Uhura, and also George Takei, and I was talking to them about it, and they said that actually the difference between the two shows was very much one of character. That we, because we didn't have the money for the special effects, spent more time analyzing the characters, getting the characters right. And they had greater depth, a certain enigmatic quality, if you like, certainly about the Avon character. And that was not so in Star Trek. Is becoming more so. Leonard Nimoy, for example, created a marvelously deep character out of Spock, but it took a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the character of Avon. How would you describe him?
Dirty Harry in outer space. That's basically it. He's a fellow who doesn't mess around and behaves in the manner that he thinks is essential for his survival in the circumstances in which he finds himself. In the event that somebody gets in his way, then he'll remove them.
Why do you suppose that he is that way? Why isn't he a nice guy?
Oh, but he is.
He is?
He's just realistic, that's all. I mean, if we were in a situation, for example, there's an episode called Orbit, I don't know whether you've seen that one, mm-hmm. where his friend, in inverted commas, Villa, weighs the amount that has to be ditched from the aircraft in order for it to remain in flight. And Avon sets out to kill Villa and to throw him overboard in order to lighten the weight. Now, you might turn around to me and say, well, I would never do that to you, but yes, you would, if you and I were in that situation. So he's realistic.
It seems that the character of Avon offers something of a paradox. On the one hand, he comes off as something as a loner, and yet when the crew's in a tight spot, it seems like Avon always gets him out of it.
Yes, well, he has nowhere else to go, does he? Every time he tries to get away on his own, which is really what he wants to do, something crops up to prevent him. So better the devil you know than the one you don't, so he's prepared to rescue them, and generally does it rather well.
Avon seems to have this sort of love-hate relationship going with the character of Blake. There seems to be a grudging respect there.
I think it's an admiration and a surprise, combination of both. Perhaps I should have put them the other way around. He's astonished at this man's naivety in the face of the odds. You see, the basic premise of Blake 7 is they cannot win. It's crazy to suggest that 7 people can defeat the Federation. If you had 7 people take on the United States of America, no way are they going to win. So that gives the bleakness to it. And yet Bleak goes on and on and on with this strange, naive, almost crusading spirit, which Avon finds extraordinary and really sympathizes with in much the same way that you would sympathize with a child.
Why does Avon go on with the crew of the Liberator? He doesn't really seem to have his heart in this whole rebellion.
He wants the ship.
He wants the ship.
In the initial stages, and indeed he gets it, and then it blows up in his face. And I remember when we did that episode, and it was decided that once he'd got it, it would blow up. What would my reaction be? And I said he would laugh, because the only alternative was to cry, and he wouldn't do that. So there's a rather dismissive smile at the end of that particular episode, and then he goes on, and these people sort of attach themselves to him.
Now, you were allowed to have an awful lot of creative control in the development of the character, did you not?
Yes, to a certain extent. I very rarely altered anything. It wasn't necessary. Terry Nation and I have a tremendous rapport. I think he's an excellent writer. You know, he's based in Los Angeles now. And I suppose we had a telepathic understanding. I would do something in the episode, Terry would see it and say, ah, all right, I'll therefore write this. It's rather like a game of football, isn't it? The ball's going to come from one direction, see what happens, and then it'll come from another one, and that's how we did it.
Speaking of Terry Nation, he told us that you have something you do with your eyes that makes you look very evil. There it is.
Evil? You just sort of hood them slightly and relax the face.
Yes.
Yes, it can be a little alarming when you do it. It's actually quite useful.
So did you go into the role with any idea of how you wanted Avon to be?
Basically, yes, because I saw Terry writes in such a way that he gives you, if you like, a skeleton and says, where do you want to start putting the flesh on? And so I thought, well, I'll start putting the flesh on here or wherever and see if he finds that acceptable, which indeed he did.
One of the really interesting things I find about Blake 7 is that as you follow the series, the characters keep changing. We lose Gan, we lose eventually
Yes.
Blake.
That's right.
Were you that hard to get along with?
No, we all got along very well, but yes, it's interesting. It's a series that kills its heroes. I liked that because I always felt and was told sometimes to behave like Superman, you know, and I always felt he shouldn't be. I felt he ought to be vulnerable, that Avon could get killed. That's why he was the way he was, because he could get killed. So if someone can kill you and you can shoot them in the back, rather than give them the chance, fair enough. So I tried to make it appear that Avon could get killed next week. And I think that's part of the excitement of the series, part of the excitement of the character.
Well, as you see it, how did the character evolve with the departure of Blake?
He assumed quite accidentally an authority. And I tried to put some weakness into the man in that he didn't quite know how to cope with these people who clung to him like leeches. Also, sometimes the scripts were not so hot, and you had to adapt there, because Terry by now was only writing the occasional one, and perhaps an author might not be quite keyed into the program. I developed him on the basis of that he had a death wish, because where else was there for him to go?
Well, now, it's true, I believe, that in the episode Blake, the final episode, you actually shoot your wife.
Yes, that's right. My wife, Janet Leigh Price, who's an actress, she did that for a bit of fun. She had never been in the series. It wasn't quite her cup of tea, her scene, if you like. But the director said, would it be a good idea to have her in it? And there was this particular part. And she got killed. And Janet, my wife, said, if Paul shoots me, I'll do it. So that's how that came about. And it was a bit of fun. They got some publicity out of it, as you can imagine. Avon shoots wife and gets away with it. Yes.
It's also a very interesting implied relationship almost between Avon and Servalan. One of the fans said to me once that if Avon and Servalan were to get married, they could rule the universe, but it would be a very messy divorce.
I think it'd be a very messy universe. Can you imagine what their children would be like? Yes. And it was ironic that he would kill Blake. That was my choice, by the way. I asked to do that. They said, Blake is coming in, he gets killed. I said, fine, I'll do it. Seemed logical to me that he would kill the only friend he had in the universe.
Well, let's talk about that final episode. You kill Blake, then everybody else gets killed, and we see you left standing, and we get that wicked smile. What did you think of the ending? Were you satisfied with it?
They asked me, what would you do? And I said, he would think it was ironic that here is a man who has something of a death wish. Everybody else dies, he doesn't. Everything goes against. The fates conspire against Avon all the time. He says in one episode, when he's trying to steal the ship, to the computer, he says, what can stop me? And he says, the computer, it says, oh, a Federation grouping of ships of this kind. He starts to go away, and that exact configuration comes after him. So what does he do? He roars with laughter, because up there, the gods, or whatever you like to call them, are against him, and he knows it, and he says, all right.
It's interesting, Avon laughs and smiles at things that the rest of us would not laugh and smile about.
Yes. Well, that's his way. That's part of me, actually. I tend to smile at life's ironies.